Welcome, everybody, to the first Friday entrepreneurship call with K-State Research and Extension. We call it the E-Call. The purpose of the first Friday E-Call is to increase the local community's knowledge about the experts, the education, and economic resources that are available to help small businesses and the communities that love them. As always, the call is being recorded, and you will get a link to the website when it's posted and a copy of the presentation deck. And I would very much like to know if this call matters to you and why. So at the end of the call, there'll be 3 short questions. Did you learn something today that you can use immediately? How many people will you forward the information to? And I'm saying that because I want you to be thinking about it. Who needs to know this information today? What will you learn? What did you learn today that was most helpful to you? And that's an open-ended question. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker, David Clingan from Grow Haze, who has an exciting new microfactory that is sparkling behind him.
Well, good morning, everyone. Like I said, my name is David Clingan. Just a quick background on who I am before we get into this. I came from retail background, so I have a little over 32 years in big box retail management, working with Targets, Home Depots, and Walmarts. Home Depot brought me into Haze, and I worked with them for about 6 years before it was time to leave the retail world. And that got me into economic development with Grow Haze, which is Ellis County Economic Development. When I first got hired in, Doug Williams, our executive director, and I sat down to talk about some programs and ideas about what we were needing in our county. And one of the programs was something I had helped for free the year before with Doug at Grow Haze, was K-State TDI was trying to get 4 or 5 of this microfactory concept opened up across Kansas, and they were applying for a grant for that, and that grant did not happen. But I really love that idea so much because we're thinking about what we need in Western Kansas and Ellis County to grow industry. I started looking at grants that were available, and I found the Kansas-based grant was up. So I went ahead and applied for that for the Grow Haze microfactory. I had asked for about $2.6 million from Kansas Commerce. In project for the microfactory itself ended up being about $4.2 million. And I will kind of just go through this PowerPoint with you. Let me shrink down something here real quick. And then we can get going. I don't think this is in. Okay. All right. So, is this in presentation mode or is it just showing on computer screen?
Just showing on the computer screen.
Wow. Give me 1 second. I'll get it in presentation mode there. Apologize for the technical difficulties. All right, we're going to go with this just like it is because it's okay. So Grow Haze microfactory. I'm going to do a quick video on this. Kind of gives you a video of walkthrough of the microfactory, and it's one of the ads that we're doing. And then we'll go through the slides in that process.
Introducing the Microfactory, the co-manufacturing space in Haze, where small-scale manufacturing meets big-scale potential. Whether you're a startup or an established business, the 30,000 square foot temperature-controlled Microfactory features 20-foot ceilings, office spaces, break room, and conference room. Located in Haze, just off of I-70, the Microfactory provides the ideal environment for your business to thrive. Microfactory. empowering the makers of tomorrow.
So the Microfactory did a ribbon cutting just a couple of weeks ago where we had Lieutenant Governor Tolan come back down for it. He did the groundbreaking originally when we got ready to build the Microfactory. And then we had a ribbon cutting a couple of weeks ago. And we had a little over 300 people show up for that process, which was great. The Microfactory itself, just to kind of give you a representation, the whole idea of the Microfactory is not just one Microfactory where one huge company comes in and takes up the whole space. Our goal, if we started off with a mission, would be workforce. How do we bring workforce into Ellis County, Western Kansas? What do we do to influence that? And then also, what do we do to help set them up for success by reducing cost and setting up programs that will put them in the right direction, and just give them a vision that for success. And so this picture you see right now kind of gives you an idea of what the possibilities are for this Microfactory. Someone could come in with their business and just lease 2,500 square feet. Someone could come in and lease 8,000, 4,000, 10,000, whatever the case might be, whatever they're saying, this is what their business plan and their budget would allow for them to do that. Because of the base grant through Kansas Commerce, through Schmidt Foundation that gave $500,000, through Patterson Family Foundation that gave $500,000, through Innovation Center that gave a $750,000 interest-free loan, we were able to raise the funds needed to build the building and take all that overhead cost pretty much away from the Microfactory. Working great with the city of Hays, we applied for IRB to get a tax abatement and also get a tax exempt on materials. And so in the math of that process, what we save in that tax abatement for the next 10 years kind of fills in that number of where we'll be paying back on the innovation loan. And just as we pay off the innovation loan, then we pick up our property tax full amount. So we did some really good math with this. And the goal was to find a way to get our square footage down to a rate where it would help benefit 3 different types of businesses. Our first one we looked at dealt with we looked at the problem, I should say, first. And the first problem we saw was we did not have any inventory in our area, any real inventory. So if you wanted to do a first generation building, if someone wanted to come out and build a 10,000 or 40,000 square foot building, we just did not have it out here. I mean, and what we do have was not meeting the needs of those that were looking. Second problem is our inventory for second and fourth generation buildings was low. We already talked about the purposes, but also talked about there was a footage issue. So we were getting requests, but the buildings we had were not meeting their look. And the third problem was to afford new buildings or high lease rate, it limits the ability to focus on growing your business. So when we talked about looking at how we can help entrepreneurs, how we can help a small business grow, those 2 categories alone was going, how do we do that where they're not so restricted on their overhead payment that they can't actually do that with their business? And when you can't do that with your business, that means you're not adding workforce. And you find yourself struggling in there. So our target audience for that workforce was startup businesses. And that would be if someone has a business, they've been working either out of the house or they've been working out of a small garage of some sort like that, and they're ready to grow, but they just can't. They can't see how those numbers work. So our opportunity that we're trying to present was going, okay, we want to present you with something that helps reduce some of your costs so you can actually do it. But at the same time, we want to make sure you're going from a dream to the reality. We want to make sure you have the tools to be successful. So we focus on startup businesses. Like I said, we talk about small businesses wishing to expand. And then we also looked at the avenue of going, if we can attract businesses outside of our market that would like to come to Western Kansas and they're ready to put in a footprint, but they're not ready to go all in. And so we've had a company out of Kansas City already come and did a walk with us. And when we were talking to them, they were looking at about 15,000 square feet. Now, to explain something a little bit more about the Microfactory is what we call an incubator. And so if a startup business started in or came into Microfactory, their target goal would be to be out of here within 3 years. Our plan is we're going to make sure that we do the business plans with you. We do all the processes with you. We make sure what your vision is thinking, that you can keep up with what you need to be a success. And over those 3 years, we'll continue to give those resources and supply those resources at a great rate for the Microfactory. But at that end of 3 year, we hope you're already getting ready to move out to a new building or whatever that case might be that continues to grow your business. And the next business can come in and enjoy that same low rate that we've been talking about. And, when we talk about this, selling points for lease on the Microfactory, like I said, when we're marketing the Microfactory itself, we talk about the base lease rate is about 40 to 50% below average anywhere else you're going to find in Kansas. Even the common area maintenance is about 50% below average. Resources that we want to provide, when someone comes to us, and we've had several in the entrepreneur come talk to us, we talk about building or maintaining a business plan. So we help them with the information they need to get a business plan. And then we start partnering them with the right people. It could be SBDC, could be Innovation Center, it could be where to look as they're looking for financial resources and good directions and foundations out there that might be someone they could reach out to and talk about. If they have patents, then we could talk to them about K-State, the TDI, because that's the one that we've been partnering with through this whole deal, and they have programs like that. So we have the resources, and we continue to grow our resources to help the business succeed. Workforce Innovation Center, Kansas Commerce, City Hayes, Grow Hayes have been excellent resources. And then, as we already talked about with the Microfactory itself, the flexibility of space. If you're going, I need 2,500 square feet, and the smallest you can find is 5,000, then you're overpaying. You have wasted space, and you might be dreaming, maybe I'll fill that later, but really you want to work in a program where you're working within your needs. The Microfactory itself provides that. It provides security. It's a 24/7 access where you have key cards to get in, or you can use your phone app if you're given permission to get into the building. We have 24/7 camera access. And so if you're releasing that 10,000 square foot section of your floor at any time, you could go onto your phone, pull through your app, and you can pull up the camera shots exactly of that area anytime you want. So if you have people that are working in the building and you just want to check in on them, great. If there's been something going wrong, you could check in on that video and you could back it up a little bit and go back to the previous day. We just want them to feel like they have the resources at hand to maintain and follow up their programs. For everyone that we look at that would come into the Microfactory, I put them under what we call the 5-year plan. Not only are we looking at the individual or business coming into the Microfactory and kind of vetting them to go, this would be a great place to grow your business. But we're also looking at the exit plan, like I talked about. So they could be exiting the Microfactory in 3 years, but we're not done with them yet. We want to be part of that plan for the next 2 years afterwards and further, actually. But we want to make sure that we're setting them up with every tool and we're there with them as they grow their business, because it's just a win-win. If they're succeeding, then Ellis County and Western Kansas is succeeding. And we want to make sure that we're giving them the tools to do that. And what I found out in a lot of instances is there are a lot of tools out there to be utilized. People just don't know where to look for them. And so a lot of times we're just having to, I won't say force it on them. We're just taking them to a lot of different sites. We're handing out a lot of material. And we've already been doing that as Grow Hayes. Anyways, we talk to businesses, entrepreneurship programs, how they can grow. But it's amazing the amount of material and locations people don't know where to look. What we talked about earlier was we talked about base rates, and I just want to give you kind of an idea. So if you look at Kansas industrial space, the average is $9.68 square foot per a year type model. And that extra is like that triple net. So if you look at that bare minimal, you're looking at about $19 to $20 per square foot. With what we've got going on now, this is for startup, for someone that's starting up a business. What we're doing here is it'd be, if you're a startup business, you'd be paying $8 a square foot all inclusive. So like I said, we're trying to get half of what you normally would pay. Now, if you came in with CNC machines or something that does a lot of pull on electricity, then we may have to change that up a little bit and put a meter. But right now, that $8 for startup business all-inclusive rate is, honestly, it's a fantastic deal for someone that's really wanting to grow their business. As we look into the businesses that want to expand or bringing in another business that wants to start a footprint, those rates would go up a little bit more, from us. But as you can see, just in the United States, basically it's about 11.5, and that's $12 to $18 for that triple net. We were just trying our absolute best to give them the best deal. And as a non-for-profit organization, our focus is not to make money. It's just to make enough to pay for the building and pay for the utilities that go with it. We are currently writing a grant to the EDA. It's kind of a funny story on this one. For the first 7-8 months, EDA out of Denver was reaching out to me and saying, David, be sure and tell us when you're ready to write a grant. Write a grant. And I said, okay. And so when I called and said, hey, I'm ready to write a grant, they called me back and said, well, Ellis County doesn't qualify for an EDA grant. So you don't like to be happy over misfortune, but then they called me back again the following day and said, hey, you can write a grant because you had a disaster in the last 3 years in Ellis County. So you can apply for an EDA disaster grant, which is an 80-20 process. And that was pretty exciting. But what I also found out in that was the minimal request for a EDA disaster grant is $1 million. So my original request was going to be about $150,000 just so I could buy electric forklift, electric pallet jack, and an air compressor system for the factory. So I had to figure out how to write a grant for $1 million. So I connected with K-State TDI again, that have had many successful grants approved with EDA. And then next thing you know, we have K-State, TDI, we have Innovation Center, myself, and we're writing a regional grant. And to hit my number, you'll see on that screen, I'm doing the grant request for the forklift, pallet jack, and the air compressor. Startup funds from $100,000 to $200,000, and this is over a 2-year period. We even put in a line item for internship programs for 2 years where we can bring an intern. So if an individual brings in their business and it doesn't matter what their square footage is, but they're trying to do something, then there's a great possibility we can hook them up with an intern for a certain amount of time. And those fundings come from that grant that we've got from EDA. And so we looked at that. We can't truly do an apprenticeship unless we have someone that has that license, but there is another program I'm looking at right now that has some sort of variety to that could also work outside of the Microfactory for that program if it helps build the workforce, which is something EDA has checked off on. And then part of the grant requesting also is about training materials. So anyone coming into the building, if they're forklift, they're electric pallet jack, or if they just have materials they've never trained on, we can actually have funding that we can pull from the EDA grant that can help pay for that material. So I would want everyone to be forklift trained. So we have a service in Hayes that does forklift training. So everyone that would come into the Microfactory would have to get that training. So we're taking care of that cost. And then we talk about leadership programs that we can do throughout the next 2 years if we get this grant, where we can bring in people. We can bring in small businesses, we can bring in entrepreneurs, we can bring in a variety, college kids, high school kids, and we can do programs that kind of takes them through the process of the business innovation. How do you grow your business? How do you be a good manager of your business? The financial portion of it. There are multiple categories that we can apply to. And Grow Hayes has already been doing a couple of those anyway. We do Ice House each year. which is all about entrepreneur programs. And like this year, we had 24 people in that program, which is fabulous. And the reason that's so important to us, just to peel off for a second, is last year in Hayes, we had 18 entrepreneurs either buy a business or start their own business. Previous year, we had 16 that either bought a business that was already operating but took it over, or they started up their own business in there. So entrepreneurs in this area have been our bread and butter. As I already talked about, this grant's a regional grant that I'm doing with the Innovation Center in K-State. It's a larger grant because Innovation Center with Scott Sproul has been doing a lot of impressive stuff, and they've got some things they put into the grant as well as K-State. Just so the rule of it never hurts to ask, near the end, I was getting ready to order the office furniture and conference room furniture and everything or that we needed. And I reached out, we did one grant looking for going, hey, I need to do this grant. We reached out to Heartland Community Foundation, but then we reached out to Network Kansas. Wasn't even thinking about them. We were just talking about it, and they said, why don't you write that grant and send it to us? And what they did was they paid for all the computer monitors and the webcam service that we have in the conference room, and just anything electronically. So they paid about $10,000 worth of information or computer software for us. You know, lease guidelines, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of people out there looking for this, but the first two companies that asked if they could lease out of Microfactory, one had hazardous chemicals, which we're not set up for. And another one came in with biohazardous products that they were wanting to lease a space. They thought we'd be a great location. They could bring in about 15 employees. But once again, the safety guidelines on that was just too crazy to even consider. I appreciated them asking, but we were just not set up for that portion of it. You know, marketing wise, we've been doing pamphlet designs, Facebook, LinkedIn, social media, websites, Hayes Post, SBDC, Innovation Center. Kansas Commerce has just been fabulous on the contacts, and talking to several of them as we just reach out and talk about businesses that are looking for locations. They have just been great in this. And then reaching out to foundations, because what I've found out in the last few weeks especially is there's a lot of businesses that reach out to the foundations looking for a location, looking for a great idea. Just to break it down on the application process, we're not super strict, but we do have some check boxes that we look for. And the number one is, does it grow a workforce? And when we talk about that is, if I have a business in Hayes that says, David, I want to come and release 10,000 square feet of Microfactory, the real question for me to ask them, and we have a board that asks that question, is, what's it going to do for the workforce? And unfortunately, we get it. There's some businesses out there that are really in cramped spots and they need to expand, but they're not really growing the workforce yet. They're really just looking for cheap rent for the first 2 or 3 years and then try and figure out what they want to do with their business afterwards. So if someone wants to notify us that they're interested, we don't, when we say general application, it's really send us an email of what your goal is, what your business is, and how that will impact Western Kansas. Labor force, as I keep touching on, is how is this going to grow our labor force? And then if it's small business, startup business, anything of that sort, then we do require that they do a business plan, and we hook them up with like SBDC. They do a business plan. They talk about where their financials are going to go, and SBDC and Innovation Center are kind of combined right now for Western Kansas, but they give them that reality, not to scare them off, but they give them that reality picture of, okay, it's great you have these numbers. Now let's talk about what your next year's plan would be. Let's talk about a 2-year plan. Let's talk about your overhead numbers. Okay, to get started, you're going to need to probably take out a loan from a bank, and we have those resources to show them where and what they can do. But that's when that reality really touches the startup business, especially going, wow, this has gone from my garage or whatever the current location is into a reality, and that risk level goes up a little bit. Microfactory committee I was talking about, we review each business goals. That's the plan. Again, we recommend resources presented for consideration, and then if approved, we have a lease that they would sign. It'd be a 1-by-year lease. And the goal in that lease, part of that writing in there basically is saying that if someone is coming to Microfactory and they have 5 employees, hypothetically, that their plan is, do they plan on having 7 or 8 by year 1 or by year 2? We're not trying to be unrealistic, but is their plan to grow their workforce? And part of that lease renewal is focused around how well they're growing the workforce and how well they're taking care of their business. So that is the short version of our Microfactory process. We've loved the concept of what we've been able to do with building great relationships. You know, like I said, Kansas Commerce was fabulous. When we reached out to them with the base grant that they were doing at the time, they gave us a lot of good information. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but they've done 2 base grants. The first one was, I think, for $100 million, and they had somewhere, I think, don't give me a line here, about 1.5 or $1.4 billion worth of requests. And then they came out with base grant number 2 the following year, which we did not apply for on that one. But that one was only for 50 million, and they rolled over everyone from the first one over into the second one, and then they had a ton more requests with that. But my point is, on any of the grants, you just got to keep hunting for those grants. But if you build some great relationships, I think Sarah Bloom is on here. There's Sarah. Sarah Bloom for us is just a great resource of, have you tried this yet? And so it can't hurt to ask for ideas and then do the process. But we've been really blessed with the foundations around here that help support the Microfactory. One thing I really didn't touch on was, not only can you lease space on the Microfactory, we have an office area as well that has 7 offices, a break room, a conference room, and then just the tools that you need. So if you wanted to lease the space and you wanted an office, the office is separate cost, but it's at a reduced rate. Or it could be someone could just come here and just lease an office for their own business and work out of the office, but they have the tools of the conference room as well to have their meetings, a break room, whatnot. So we're trying to touch on as many different opportunities and figure out how we can best serve our community with the lowest overhead costs as possible and still be successful. Questions?
Great, Tim. David. Yeah, so Ron Lunsford from SCORE is sharing free small business mentoring. And if anybody else has a question or a suggestion for places to help David and the Microfactory, please feel free to open your camera or your microphone and share.
So at first I thought it was just in a large makerspace, but now it sounds like more like a business incubator plus industrial space, right?
Exactly.
Nice.
It's adaptable too. But the hardest thing to do is build a building that you have no idea what you're going to do with. So it's completely open. You got, basically it's a 30,000 square foot building, 27,600 of it is factory space. If you came in and said, I want 5,000 square feet, then we could find about doing a wall for you. Or if you're a welder, we can order in those heavy curtains that you can drop down, that one, it's a sound barrier, but it's a protector. But we didn't put any walls inside the factory just because we're not restricting that. And our expectation would be, in some cases, will be a huge trust. You're going to go, Nathan's going to go, I'm 5,000 square feet here, and my neighbor's David Clingan. And you might see a yellow tape line going in between us, just so you can do your business, you know. And that's why you have the camera system. That's why you have all the other tools, because it just really is trying to cut the cost, but also set you up for success. Once we have the air compressor in here, we can do drops anywhere in the building. Our electricity is set up for high use, and we have outlets and water all throughout the building.
What's your insurance look like?
Well, with the way the lease works, but right now the insurance on the building and everything as is runs around 13,000.
I just imagining you've got any number of different projects going on at once, all including chemicals and fire and everything else. That's going to be interesting.
It is, and that's why we anything that we have that's presented to us, we take it to our committee. But also I reach out to our insurance, but that the person leasing takes on part of that in their lease as part of their insurance they'll carry for that responsibility. So that's another aspect of it that this is how you learn as an entrepreneur about upcoming cost. That's going to be something consistent with them anyway.
So David, Ron Wilson says conceptually, is this sort of a combination of co-working space and maker space? And he asks, are there other co-working spaces in Hayes?
We have for the Microfactory, yes. Grow Hayes also has another building called Brief Space, which is a co-working business, which has several offices that can be leased out. It comes with 4 conference rooms, but the way Brief Space works, it's a shared workspace where if Sarah wanted to, she could be a member there and she could come in every day and either have the same desk to hook up and just work out of, or she could rent an office, which we have sliding glass doors. We actually are expanding that today. That's why I'm working out of the Microfactory. But the privileges of that, Sarah could come in, and if she needs a conference room, she just puts it on the schedule, able to use the conference room. We have a kitchenette area for downstairs and upstairs. We have handicap access stairwell. We even have a pod station inside there. But we get multiple uses from the Brief Space as well for that very same thing, and it's done very well.
Other questions? It's exciting, David.
It is.
Other questions, other resources? I see Dr. Tim Peterson on here, and he has the Kansas Micro Internship Program, and David's aware of that. Good.
Yep.
Good. Yep, we're using them right now too. Anybody else? Oh, thank you, David. That was terrific. And I look forward to sharing your slides with everybody. Yeah, and Tim's put the link to the Kansas Micro Interns program into his into the chat. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like to make? I've got a few related to K-State and the Kansas Hub, but does anybody else have any announcements? Programming or otherwise? Steve?
Yes, I think hello, everyone. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about our 3rd annual network conference coming in May. I'm going to put the registration information where you can go to a website and learn more about it in the chat. But and if you have any questions, you can email me as well. So would love to see all of you. Nancy, I think you're a part of that in some way, aren't you?
Looking forward to it. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. That was important. I'm often embarrassed about what I forget to announce. So thank you for making the effort to be on here. Anybody else? While you're thinking, I want to make sure everybody knows that the Kansas Infrastructure Summit is in April, April 24th in Salina, and Steve put the Network for Change link in there. April 24th in Salina, the Kansas Hub Summit. I put the registration in there. Unbelievable Kansas resources for infrastructure right now. And I've been co-presenting with Matt Henson from the Infrastructure Hub Technical Assistance. And he points out, I know that you all think you're too small to go after infrastructure money, but he points out that the two first successful grants from Kansas Build to Kansas Build will match the Kansas Infrastructure Hub money. And Ozaki, Kansas has been funded for 2 successful Kansas Build matching funds with population of 600. And he urges you to think about regional plans. Maybe you're all going after sewer money or water projects. It doesn't mean you have to link your water projects or your sewer projects. It just means you have to link your money project or your so that you're asking for all of the towns in your county or all of the towns in 2 counties instead of 10 different cities asking for funding. So the bigger impact that you can have, the better. Remote Work Wednesdays is the first Wednesday of every month. And I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Ron. I don't know what the program is, but the bit.ly link there is for Remote Online Initiative. Ron, is there anything you want to say about the next program on May 1st?
On May 1, we'll be having Stacy Kohlmeyer as our Remote Work Wednesday speaker. She's with the Florence Corporation, employs some 60 remote workers. So we're looking forward to hearing a private sector perspective on the opportunities and challenges for remote work. It's a lunch and learn noon on the first Wednesday of each month.
And everything's recorded and archived just like here. I am increasingly hearing stories, data about the loneliness people feel in remote work. And that's one of the previous calls that you had, but we heard about that this week at the Kansas Sampler Foundation. And Save Your Town is talking about it as well. Our last of 6 series in the Kansas Trail Talk Tuesdays is this Tuesday, April 9th, from noon to 1 p.m. And the call is on rail trail issues. We've had 6 wonderful talks where you can find out who has done this already successfully around the state. And we have quite a trail community. The talks are sponsored by the Sunflower Foundation and Kansas Trails Council. And the link there for registration, or actually that is the link to both the registration and the archived calls. Anybody think of anything to announce? I've still got a few. We're still doing grant writing basics. And the next one is in May. If you need, if you feel like your community really has good reasons to do an in-person workshop, I'm welcoming those invitations too. But what I'm seeing is that people really appreciate the opportunity to do it at their convenience rather than when you decided to have it. So that's, I'm really seeing on our last workshop, we had 45 registrations. And so people are still attending. And if you'd like to promote your, just in the same way that, you can here, if you would like to promote your event, please send me an email at ksrecv@ksu.edu. And Sarah prompted me, thank you so much, Sarah Bloom, who is a partner with us, and Sarah LaRoche. We have Kansas Commerce and Main Street and Network Kansas are all partners in making our first ever Connecting Entrepreneurial Communities. And our first task is to find a host community for it. The community designation that we've chosen is that if you have 9,999 residents or fewer, you can apply to be a host community for a conference we expect to hold in June of 2005. And our goal is to bring people to your conference. You don't have to have a Hilton Garden Inn. This is an embedded conference where we have one place where we can have a gathering for our meals and our keynote speakers. And other than that, within 10 minutes of the gathering place, we need to have locations that can host anywhere from 6 to 30 participants to hear about the workshops. Thanks, Sarah, for that prompt. And if you'd like to promote these events and all the K-State Research and Extension events on your social media, just send an email to that same ksrecv@ksu.edu, and we'll send you the graphics to put on your social media or your newsletters. Or you can be like, so that you can be like Nathan Carr in Moundridge, Kansas, who uses that as his programming for the Moundridge Public Library, and just expand what the community knows about. Next time, we have a call that probably no one will be interested in because nobody has housing problems. But for those few of you that do, you might be interested in the state's housing development resources. Ryan Vincent from the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation will be here to talk about all the new resources they have to help you with housing. And I think that's all I have, but I suspect, what's the email for the events? ksrecv@ksu.edu. And it's in the chat. So I always like to leave with a little thought for the day, and I'll bet David feels this very strongly. Kurt Vonnegut is credited to have said, "We have to continually be jumping off cliffs and developing our wings on the way down." There we go. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody.